Hi, it's Maria, and I'm doing another Maria Unfiltered, and this is in the Forgiveness to Love series. And today I'm sharing some info about just how to what extent the dark will target innocent human beings. And so, for many of us, our family is the darkest of the dark, right? Because we know them and they know us, and they know what triggers us, they know our buttons, and they can create despair in the lives of those whom they're most closely attached to, right? And I know that sounds absolutely crazy, doesn't it? To actually hurt your closest relatives. I mean, that just doesn't, that's so contrary to common sense, actually. Um, yeah. So, and in most cases, I mean, there's no way we would expect this cruelty from our families, right? We might even expect it from like some depraved adversary, but even then, sometimes it's just over the top, and we just don't want to deal with it because we think, oh no, this just can't be. But from a family member, that's like a double, oh my gosh, this is too crazy, right? So, but that's our 3D existence here on planet Earth. And I know for me at least, oh my God, for years, I've been stalked and monitored and followed and harassed and belittled and lied about and defamed and judged and even punished. Yeah, beyond any possible understanding. I just had no idea what was going on. And I had no idea why it was going on because, again, this is just too crazy, right? We don't. Uh, uh, Psychologically healthy and stable individuals do not engage in that behavior, right? And so, for years, I've been living my life under a microscope. And I know too many people know too much about me. uh, and it's wrong. It's because it's hurtful, because it's a violation of my privacy. It's a violation of who I am as a citizen of the greatest country, on the planet, and as a as a woman, as a mother, as a divine being. And so it's just contrary to our sensibilities, truly. And so I've been told that my sibling, I only have one, thank goodness, stalks me 24/7 and copies nearly everything I do, and basically contacts everyone on my contact list, and is in some type of twisted competition with me. And I'm not saying this because I have proof, because there is no way of getting that proof, because I know it, I feel it, I've been told it. I absolutely am positive that it's going on. But when someone goes to that extent, they lie so well that, of course, they're going to deny it. And so for many of us, in fact, when we are in litigious situations, and I am in an estate situation with my sister who didn't even tell me anything about the distribution of the estate, as she has an obligation to do. And so she just started, thieving it and distributing it, and without my knowledge, without my permission, without any information given to me. And so I didn't really understand why the competition, but then afterwards I thought, oh, well, she wants what belongs to me, right? Because when someone behaves that way, in a way that is just patently illegal and highly abusive, they want what you have, right? It's a matter of overpowering you and controlling you to some degree. At least that's what many of the videos now on narcissists who have that sense of entitlement, and they don't really have to acknowledge what it is they're doing. They just go ahead and do it and let everybody else kind of scurry around and try to clean up their mess. And so certainly when you take all their assets, it's a little hard for somebody to hire an attorney, especially when they've been told that there isn't one attorney in the entire state of Florida who would take this case on for whatever reason. But anyway, so she got everything. And I thought, so, okay, so you got everything. Now leave me the hell alone and just go. But instead, it's this 24/7 that I've been told about. And so that is whether you're in a marital situation, a family situation, an employment situation, you know, a health situation, perhaps. Those in control and those in power kind of feed on that power and control, and so they abuse their victims. I mean, you can see that from anyone you hire, in fact, because even though you are in a position of power because you're paying them, they are in a position of power because they are doing this, they are providing the service. And so, and when you have someone like in an estate situation, so not only are they providing the service that they aren't providing, but in fact, they are getting paid to do that because they are taking your money. And so then you've lost before you've started. But anyway, it's just that when so many people come at me and tell me what's going on, it's really hideous because they know more about my life than I do, and that's just not acceptable to me. But I also heard that it's a matter of hatred and obviously jealousy and things like that, and to have people break into my residences and poison my food. I mean, that is well, certainly that's a crime, and I know that only because I have felt very ill as a result of food I've eaten, and of course that was the way that my family actually dealt with people that they didn't that they really didn't care for, that they wanted to get rid of. So and my father had said that my sister was teaming up with my ex, and my ex has had a history of poisoning me really since the day we were married. And so you go, oh my God, this is just too crazy. Anyway, he actually disclosed that to his therapist and his attorneys well after several years of this kind of slow poisoning, which I didn't know, and they diagnosed me with MS and all kinds of neurological issues and stuff. But in fact, if I just wasn't eating all of that food with all of those harmful chemicals, I didn't have any health issues. But anyway, and then it was the death of my parents, and they both met untimely deaths, which you'll hear about in practically every video, because that is, I think I have a duty to kind of break that generational curse, if you will, of the martyrdom that so many females in my family have experienced. And I think this is kind of going on globally, actually, because there are so many women who have been oppressed and suppressed and have been abused and have just sacrificed their lives for their families and for their husbands. And, it's time that as our souls evolve, it's time that we take care of ourselves. And it's not necessary, and it certainly isn't healthy, to allow another human being to overpower us in any way. I mean, now that is crazy, right? You don't need to do that. And so in terms of, my ex, he told me from the day of our honeymoon, that he wasn't attracted to women and he was attracted to men and my fortune. And so that's how we started off married life. And, but, my father had just paid for a hugely uh, extravagant wedding at a hotel, a lovely hotel. And I was young and innocent. And I really didn't know how to process it other than saying, like, oh my God, this is just so crazy, right? I mean, there are a lot of, oh my God, this is just so crazy experiences that we all go through. And so the dark blanketed my life, in ways that seemed to smother the possibility of joy and happiness and success and love and all the things that are available to us when we make the right choices and when we don't have so many lessons that we need to overcome and to learn. And, again, I'm grateful for every one of those lessons. I um, do not condone the extent to which it was just pushed over the line. It's one thing to kind of walk by somebody and to go like that. And it's another thing to go walk by somebody and like smack them until, you've broken their arm. And so that's what happened. It's almost like, you you start doing something, but then you just get so wound up in it that you kind of lose yourself and you forget, and you become, it's kind of like the primal part of us comes out, and we start being very, very abusive. And so that's what I saw with all the behaviors that have affected me, is that, to an extent I can understand if he wanted a man, that's fine. I said, let's get a divorce, an annulment right away. And he said, no, how did he phrase that? No, I'm not interested in being a divorcee, but I am interested in being a widower. And I just was like, oh my God, that's too much. So, so, you know, there, it just didn't need to be like that. But apparently my soul, was ready for this adventure. And my mind and my heart kind of lagged way behind. But the toxic energy of dealing with an ex and a sibling, and then unfortunately my son as well, was more than I bargained for. But again, um, who am I to say? I've gotten through it up to this day, and so I have learned much, and I trust that they too have learned much, because there is no way of perpetrating such criminal behavior and not having and not having the consequences, and not feeling the consequences, and noticing the ramifications, because there are both, and of course karma, right? So whether or not, we get in an accident tomorrow, or we lose something, or something happens, and so we don't necessarily draw the correlation between that event and something that we had done to another that was very hurtful to them. So you see, karma, karma has a way of showing up in our lives in a very seductive way, because when we really do understand it, then we are totally transformed, because we know that, even helping ourselves to whatever doesn't belong to us, or borrowing something and, really have no interest in returning it, or we forget it, or we lose it, or whatever, and we never mention it again rather than replacing it. And so whether someone borrows something from us and doesn't replace it, which it seems like that's the more straightforward way of dealing with issues, because if you do something to me and then I do it back to you, then you all of a sudden, you don't have to be a neuroscientist to say, oh, I get that. But in fact, when it's something that's far removed, then it's a little hard to put the pieces together. But eventually, there's so much going on uh, in so many dimensions that ultimately we are shown the reasons for certain things that happen in our life. And so when I get back to the sister, the sibling, who I was told actually goes after every male who even invites me to coffee, and pretty much seduces them from what I hear. And so I'm thinking, wow, is she really hurting me? I don't think so. I think she's kind of doing me a favor, because if someone were to be so easily seduced, I sure don't want them. And if it was just like somebody I met at the bank and we were having coffee, like, I, I have no interest in that. That's just, I like friends, but that doesn't mean that anything more is going to come of that. And so anyway, if someone wants to engage in that kind of behavior, then he and she are much more wounded than I could have imagined. And so my life is better for that. And so sometimes, they give us gifts. They think they're really hurting us, but in fact, they're gifts. Because who wants a two-timing gigolo, right? I mean, or whatever, however you want to call them. I just say that because if it's just somebody that would be the last person I'd want, is somebody that rejected me and went to somebody who just got their contact information and set up oh, nice running into you. But if they can't see through the setup part of it, then they deserve it, really. But I'm kind of getting off track here, but I think that's just crazy. But I did hear, from people that, she's hired people to do black magic on me to have me age earlier, or to have my career not thrive, or what do people, or health issues. And so I don't know what people do when they have all those witch kind of things. I'm not into Wicca. I don't know really much about it. I focused more on the light, and so I don't ever wish anything bad on anyone, even my sibling, and even my ex. He transitioned. He died in either 15 or 16 or something like that. Anyway, no one bothered to tell me, but he's been gone a long time, so he's not really an issue, although my son took on an alias. And as I don't know if I actually mentioned it in another video, but his name was Peter George. And so the alias that's on the internet for his father, who's Scott George, is P.G. Scott. So the way I interpreted that was Peter George acting as Scott. So yeah, I don't know if that's for real, or why he would do that, or is there some kind of plot or plan or whatever. But whatever, it's coming from a very dark place, from a son who doesn't have to stoop so low, who doesn't have to wallow in the gutter and try to, you know, finish off his mother, because he did. He stole my home and everything in it and every bank account, and then stuck me with $100,000 student loan, and all the money that I spent, $5,000 a month, with his visa bills, while he was blackmailing me if I didn't do it. And so, all of those things, I still love my children, because I remember the days that of their birth. I remember the days that when they were the most beautiful little children and little babies and infants, and how they used to sleep in my bed with me because I just held them all night long. And so I remember all, helping them with homework and doing all the wonderful things that a mom does, or that I certainly did. and I spent every waking moment with them. So to see that there's so much darkness and hatred for me in their soul is quite painful. But again, I have to understand that they are on their own soul path. And so whatever they choose, they will reap, both the benefits and the consequences of it. And so, if you have a mom or anybody in your family who just sends you love and light and wants only the best for you and cheers you on and is just so happy to see you, for you to reject that, I think is really pitiful for you. That brings up an issue, something that just came to mind, which is when I realized that my son was actually sabotaging me and was working with his father in a trial against me when his father had sued me, and tried to block my bankruptcy, actually, which my attorneys told me to do to get rid of one of the ridiculous lawsuits that he had against me for $10 million. Anyway, my son was his father's star witness, and I had sole custody of my son, and he only wanted to live with me. He couldn't stand being around his father. And so he and I were together, 24/7 while he was in high school. And even when he was in college, I ended up having my company's office in Dallas, and he ended up going to school in Dallas, so that once a month I would fly there. And we would, every Friday, the Fridays that I was there, we would go and have dinner at the Cheesecake Factory because that was his favorite. And so, uh, and we did everything together. But oh, I know what I was going to say. Is that when we did this Zoom deposition and he testified against me, and he basically denied that that he had heard all the things that he had heard, and that he had testified and told the divorce judge that he had heard, and so um, it was before Zoom, so they did a video conference, and all of a sudden, I saw his face, and I hadn't seen him in a long time because he had moved to London, and so I hadn't seen his face, and even though I didn't know what was going to come out of his mouth, even though he was with his father, and I thought it wasn't going to be good for me, I was still, happy to see his face. I was happy to see him because he's my child, and I will always love him. And I guess my face was on his screen, and his face was on my screen, and all of a sudden he said, "Move that camera. I don't want to look at her face." And so I guess whoever was there, shifted the camera, and he didn't have to look at me. And I can understand that perhaps it was because he was going to lie. And he was going to say that he didn't say things that he did say to the divorce judge, which was that he had heard his father threaten me. And the reason I wrote the letter was because I was quite afraid because of all the threats I've sustained for the 16 years, actually the 20 years that I was before I was divorced from his father. And so, um, yeah. So he didn't want to look at me. And I thought that was very telling of the guilt. But it wasn't so much guilt that he wasn't going to not lie about it, right? So how guilty did he really feel? Because if he really felt guilty, he he might have figured out another way, unless he too was threatened. You just never know, right? So that's why we can't really judge anyone, because we just don't know what's going on in their minds and what's going on in their heart. We just don't know the battles, the emotional battles that people struggle with internally. And so, what else was I going to say? Oh, and in terms of other things that have been sabotaged in my life, and this might hold true for you as well, is that I had heard that my sibling interferes with every doctor visit or dental visit or lab result or, MRI or CAT scan or ultrasound or attorney or tax preparer or anyone I try to reach, whether it's medical insurance or car insurance, or because if she has someone on my phone 24/7, then they certainly know every call I'm making, right? And so then they can just pick up the phone and say, hello, I'm calling from, whoever, because all you have to do is allege that you are representing someone in power, and all the minions will comply, right? And so that's basically all it takes. And you don't even have to be truthful about it at all. But the reality is that everyone's a minion to some degree. Truly, everyone is, I don't even like to say this word, but a bootlicker, or a brown noser. You've heard those words. I don't personally use them, but in this context, I thought, oh yeah, they're really appropriate. And so every official, in whatever capacity, whether they're official in the government or whether they're official, because they're a manager at McDonald's. I mean, excuse me, sorry, they control others, they supervise others. And so then they have the authority over others. And so just like when I was told that there wasn't one attorney in the entire state of Florida who could represent me, I don't know where that directive came from. I don't know how high up it came from. I don't know. This is just what an attorney volunteered. He told me, and he said, you won't find one attorney in the entire state of Florida. And I thought, well, that very concisely and clearly explains to me that I am to lose this case, because I can't win without proper representation, right? And if the what is it, the stacked cards, like the stacked deck, if the deck is so stacked not in my favor, then we're just beating a dead horse, really, because there's just no way. So Carl Bernstein, who of the Watergate fame, he has a quote that I've liked. Well, I really like two of his quotes, but this one is, he tells us that the branch of government known as Congress is broken. And I thought, oh, that's an interesting thing to come out with when he's such a public figure. But I thought, that's really the tip of the iceberg, because there are other branches of government that are broken as well. And I am referring to the judicial branch, because I know when I was in law school, I didn't really have the full scope of all the things that go on. But, anytime people are paid, anytime there's money involved, integrity can be questioned, right? And so, and just like before an attorney even decides whether or not he'll take your case, right, he's going to ask you the amount of your estate, right? Because he doesn't want to put in all that time unless you have the financial resources. And so that is an example of a financial interest being put before a client, because most attorneys aren't going to work pro bono, and they're not going to be as interested in a client who doesn't have much versus a client who is quite wealthy. And I'm not even saying that about my case, because it didn't have anything to do with that, because there was a lot of money that was available. But anyway, what else can I tell you? One of the questions that I've always asked myself is, why is the dark so dark? Why do they have to just, and how do they get away with it? You know, why do they do that? And why do they, and I know this sounds like it's coming from a very innocent perspective, but truly, and I know it's our subconscious that, that propels this type of behavior. But we wonder who allows this behavior to continue and to go unpunished. And so then again, we get to the issue of karma. And does anything actually go unpunished? I don't believe it does. I believe that we all get our due, and that there is the golden rule, and that yes, that's we do unto others. And what else can I tell you? Um, because there are instances of injustice everywhere, and rather than deal with the symptoms, it's much better to just kind of go to the core of the issue, go to the root of the problem rather than the blossom, because that's the salvation. We will find our salvation there. It's through our healing that we can make changes in the world. And so when human beings want change, they um, they have to take responsibility for themselves. They have to take accountability. Corruption is merely a symptom of the darkness inherent in humanity. And so it isn't a boogeyman out there. It isn't even, that that evil-looking uh, opposite to God, to the energy of love, to the energy of the Creator. So it isn't this demonic type of energy, but it is a matter of being comfortable with transparency, because for so long we didn't have truth and justice and honesty and loyalty at the forefront of our decisions. A lot of times people slipped. How much could they get away with is bigger, and is bigger better, more expensive, more designer labels, more bigger cars, bigger everything, more vacations. It's all about feeding the ego. And so as we do that, then everything around us kind of takes on a different hue, a different color, because we see it through those lenses of, I'm better than you are. I have a larger home than you have. And I've gone here and I've gone there, and this is my net worth statement, and this is my car over there. And so we can just kind of get wrapped up in all that BS that really distracts us from being who we really are. Because even King Tut, yes, he was buried with his treasure, but what good did it do him? And so, and I think of even my ex, who said to me, I'm going to get all your father's money, and I married you for your father's money. He's gone. And so, and I don't know if he's been gone 7 years or 5 years, 7 years, I don't know. But regardless, what good did all that money do him? And then yeah, what good did it do him? Then he had other people kind of mopping up his messes and sacrificing their own souls, to continue in his poisoning and stalking and destroying and lawsuits and orders of protection and all the stuff that he thought, oh, I'm going to get you, I'm going to get you. And then if my son is actually an alias, I just can't even imagine, because I know that my son knows better, and I know that he absolutely can turn his life around, and like all of us, actually, you know. So, what else can I tell you? There are millions of us on the planet right now that are kind of experiencing some very difficult times in the aftermath of the pandemic. And so we are at that point where there's no more sweeping things under the rug. There's no more backroom deals and no more bribes and payoffs and payouts and hush money. And, the truth is the truth, and the truth really shall set our people free. And so I'm happy to give you that message because truly I believe that with every ounce of my being. And so that's what I think I'm going to say to you right now. And I will mention one thing. I was just listening to a video, and it was by an estate attorney who was doing like this a live broadcast talking about estates. And because I'm here in Florida dealing with an estate, although I haven't gotten very far because no one talks to me here. No one will even discuss it with me here, including the authorities. But when we have positions of power, as we said, in fact, if we're executors, co-executors, or whatever, trustees, successor trustees, we have a fiduciary duty to those to whom we serve. And so, for instance, when in an estate situation, the executor most certainly has a duty to apprise all of the beneficiaries of the assets and of the liabilities, the money market accounts, the bank accounts, the taxes, everything that is related to that estate. And yet I received nothing. And every time I sent an email or I placed a call or I did a Facebook message, because that was the only reason I got on Facebook, was in order to be able to communicate with my family. And I actually saw my daughter's wedding. I saw pictures of my daughter's wedding on Facebook. It was a beautiful wedding, and it was some time ago. And I saw pictures of my grandchildren. I think I have two, and they both belong to my daughter. I think so. So that's kind of a beautiful thing. But so one has a duty, and yet when you don't do your duty, when you don't fulfill your duty, then what can the other person do, right? And then they can't find a lawyer. No lawyer wants to touch this. I'm not sure why, but no lawyer wants to touch this. And so then what do? You just continue your crimes, right? You just continue the thieving and the stealing, and you wait for the statute of limitations to run. But what good does that do? Because there's so much fraud involved. And plus, if you don't have an attorney, you're going to lose anyway, truly. And so I was thinking about this the other day. It was like, how cockroaches, they when you shine the light on a cockroach, they scurry back into their little holes because they don't want anyone to see them. And so that's kind of how I see the dark souls, because they engage in illegal dealings and they don't really want to be exposed, right? Because as long as the lights are off and as long as they can continue doing what they're doing, no one knows, right? And from even platforms like this, where I'm giving you this message and I'm telling you with an open heart, I'm telling you that some of the things that I've gone through, and I know that there are things that you've gone through. And so my goal is really to be able to be in a position where I can help you deal with some of the things you've gone through because of what I've gone through, and because I've gotten through them, and because, I'm not, I don't have bitterness within me. I don't have hatred. I don't have anger. I really don't. I see it for what it is. I don't like it, obviously. And I wish my family were loving and caring toward one another. And and there was a feeling of like the Greek family that I had grown up in, where people cared about one another. I think that whole extended family idea is just lovely. And it's a very European thing. And it's a very, well, and of course, the South Americans, they're very loving as well. And so, and I don't mean to exclude any continent, please. So, yes, North America, South America, Africa, Asia, um, the Antarctic. So, yeah, I don't want to get off the tangent here, but yeah, I did think that it would be nice for a family, to kind of get together and have music and fun and food and have serious existential conversations as well, because I think that's to me that's what I enjoy the most. But but how did how did the sibling actually um, how did the sibling produce my signature in order to sell two homes? I mean, that's a pretty shocking thing, I think, because we're not talking about, Madam X, just putting an X there. We're talking about a signature. And if I were a, um, a tenant in common, if I were, if and certainly I lived in my condo, and my condo was purchased for me, and that was clear in the will and the trust. And so, if someone were to sell it from right under my nose, um, and then tell me afterwards, um, yeah, is that thieving my identity? Is that forging my signature? Is that uh, defrauding um, me, the government, including the taxes? Because if, in fact, it was stated that I lived with my parents, then someone mentioned to me that perhaps it was because they listed me as a caretaker of my father, in which case they didn't have to pay taxes on the sale of it. So, I mean, is is that yet another crime? Are we, going to be dealing with the IRS as well? I just don't know. I just know that uh, my sibling had control of both of my parents during their last weeks of their life. Now, my mother was starved, and so she was too weak to speak. And my father was basically hidden in a hospital room, and I didn't know about that, so he couldn't tell me. But in terms of, because I've never seen any of the documents, I actually wonder if maybe they were signed. They were coerced to sign documents, other documents, you know, while they were, in the control of someone else. And so I don't know if there was that type of manipulation and intimidation. I certainly hope not. I hope that my parents didn't have to suffer more than I already know that they suffered during the last few moments or the last few weeks of their life, which isn't something I would wish on anyone, not even my worst adversary, or certainly I'd never wish that on a pet or a stray or anyone. Um, because I think it is important to die in dignity, and to have that stripped away from you um, by your own family is absolutely disgusting. And so, let's see. I, and in terms of, now my sibling had an estate attorney. The estate attorney she hired, I assume she hired him, um, double as the real estate attorney selling both of those condos. And so he just happened to be her Bel Air neighbor and friend. And he just happened to be hired by her to in those transactions, in those real estate transactions, where I would have had to have signed off on the sale of my home, who just happened to give one of those to my son, one of those condos to my son who lived in London, who just happened to have no rights at all to it, and who just happened to have the motive to destroy the evidence that could incriminate him for not telling the truth in that deposition where he basically sacrificed his mother. So, and he just happened to do that in the condo where all of that paperwork was kept, and the condo that he sold, and the condo that the sibling gave him. So it just seems very suspect, actually, And actually, because I hadn't heard from her for years, well, yeah. And so I even went to their Bel Air home, which is right across the street from Morton Plan Hospital. And I went there, and my brother-in-law answered the door. And he opened the door, and he saw me. And then he proceeded to shut the door, like in my face. Not in my face, really, because I didn't approach him. But I was maybe, I don't know, 5 feet away, maybe 6 feet away. Anyway, because I think he opened the door going in. And so, and I even had a surprise birthday party for him when he was like, I don't know if he turned 30 or 40 or whatever, but really to shut a door on someone that you haven't seen in a while. And I used to see him and buy him Christmas gifts and things like that. And it just, I don't know, it really, it breaks my heart to some extent. And then I think, these are people that have chosen the dark, and so I can love them, but I'm going to have to love them from afar, because it's not good for me. And then when I hear that she has blocked my audience, so I don't know how many of you are hearing this, but in any event, at least I'm telling the truth. And I think it's called like shadow banning or something, and I think it's inherently illegal, really, to limit the output of information that someone is putting out just because you don't like it, right? Or just because it incriminates you, or it tells the truth and you're not into the truth right now. And so it kind of falls on deaf ears. But again, everything comes out. And so, I will end this now. Oh, the only thing else I have here is that, I talked about the ex having died 5 or 7 years ago, and so the alias of my oldest son. But in fact, I wondered if it had anything to do with the Social Security benefits, because I was due Social Security benefits, and yet for all these years I haven't gotten them because I haven't been able to come up with a death certificate. And the Social Security Administration just keeps saying, we're not going to give you any money unless you can come up with that certificate. And I'm like, but I have called everybody from governors to the Illinois Department of Public Health, to senators, to representatives, to all the local politicians and things like that in Cook County, and no one can come up with it. So and I haven't, even the funeral home. And so I haven't gotten a copy of that. And so that money is just there while I am struggling, for sure, struggling. But anyway, okay, I'm going to leave you with that. And I just want to thank you for being here. And I look forward to hearing from you again, seeing you again, and maybe we'll connect tomorrow. Okay? And if I don't talk to you before Mother's Day, I wish you a beautiful Mother's Day with all your babies.